My message to the Chinese people, leave China and come to Europe, or go to Middle East to save yourself from the CCP. New podcast series by Mohammed Raj. Abdullah, copyright Mohammed Raj Abdullah.
This actually connects directly to you, the listener.
Oh, for sure.
Because the reasons you can buy incredibly cheap, highly advanced commercial drones or smart devices online right now is partly because the Chinese state is aggressively subsidizing those specific industries to try and outrun this massive domestic unemployment crisis.
Exactly. The danger for the state, though, is the timeline. If an AI algorithm replaces a logistics planner and a drone replaces the delivery driver, and there is no social safety net to catch those displaced workers,
Yeah.
the performance contract breaks.
And there's no voting them out.
Right. In a democracy, the public can theoretically vote out a government that fails to manage an economic transition. In China, the only historical mechanism for structural change is civil unrest.
Which explains the creation of these so-called safety valves to prevent 400 million people from organizing. The sources mention the use of extreme nationalism, funneling public frustration toward foreign adversaries or focusing anger on Taiwan. But the domestic economic policies are baffling.
How so?
They are actively encouraging unemployed, highly educated college graduates to leave the dense urban centers and move to the rural countryside.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to push back on the logic here. Wait, so their solution to highly educated tech graduates not finding jobs is a modern reboot of Mao's down to the countryside movement.
Yep, pretty much.
How does sending a software engineer to farm cabbage actually solve an AI crisis?
Well, it doesn't solve the economic crisis at all. It manages the political threat.
Oh.
What's fascinating here is that by dispersing frustrated, unemployed youth out of dense cities where they can easily congregate and share grievances, the state dilutes the potential for organized protest.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Right. But their primary safety valve, the tool they are really betting their survival on, is the digital cage. The government is pursuing high-quality development, which means becoming the absolute global hegemon in AI, facial recognition, and digital surveillance.
So they are hoping that technology can essentially replace the economic performance contract.
Precisely. We often think of surveillance as just, a camera on a street corner. But the sources describe a seamless, integrated mechanism. Imagine an algorithm flagging a specific critical keyword you sent in a private message on WeChat.
Okay.
Instantly, your digital wallet is frozen, your social credit score plummets. And when you arrive at the station and try to scan your ID to board a high-speed train to join a protest in another city, the gate simply will not open.
Wow.
They do not need to deploy riot police if the protester cannot even buy a ticket or step onto the street.
They are using the very AI that is causing the unemployment to physically and digitally contain the fallout of that unemployment.
It's a closed loop.
But if the state can no longer rely on economic growth to keep people compliant, they need a backup plan for loyalty. I mean, it isn't enough to just control where you travel or where you work. To maintain this level of suppression, the sources argue the state demands total ideological monopoly, which leads us to the clash of a religion and the spiritual vacuum.
Yeah, Abdullah's article is particularly sharp on this point. He notes that the CCP is rooted in hardcore Marxist-Leninist atheism. From the state's perspective, any religion, be it Islam, Christianity, or Buddhism, is not just a personal belief, it is a direct competitor for the heart and loyalty of the citizen.
There can be no alternative moral authority. The party must be the only allowed higher power.
Exactly. And to enforce this monopoly, the CCP utilizes a deliberate policy known as syncretization.
Syncretization.
Yeah, this is not merely an administrative registration of churches or mosques. It is the active, forced reshaping of all religious doctrines and practices to conform flawlessly to party ideology.
And the geopolitical source details the physical reality of syncretization. It is incredibly aggressive. The state is actively altering the architectural landscape by, removing domes for mosques and erasing Arabic script from public spaces.
Erasing it completely.
Any expression of independent religious identity outside the tightly controlled state parameters is automatically framed by the government as a potential national security threat.
And to highlight the specific nature of this strategy, our geopolitical source compares China's approach to how another authoritarian system handles religion, Russia.
Oh, yeah.
It is a brilliant comparison because it dispels the myth that all autocracies just operate from the exact same playbook.
I found this comparison so eye-opening because Russia operates on a model of nationalist traditionalism. In stark contrast to China's mandated atheism, the Russian state actively embraces religion, embedding it deeply into its national identity.
Right.
Islam is officially recognized as a traditional religion alongside Orthodox Christianity, Judaism, and Buddhism.
In regions like Tatarstan or Chechnya, you see open mosques, state-supported Islamic universities, and highly visible public celebrations of holidays like Eid.
The state funds it.
The state funds these institutions. But that visibility does not equate to freedom. Russia maintains a suffocating grip on spiritual life through entirely different mechanisms.
Right. Because the Kremlin favors state-approved religious hierarchies, private devotion is tolerated. But the moment individuals attempt to form an independent religious organization outside the state's corporate structure, they are crushed under sweeping anti-extremism laws.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like looking at two completely different corporate strategies for authoritarianism. So China wants to completely rewrite the menu, but Russia operates more like a strict franchise manager. You can serve the burgers and put up the localized signs. You can be visibly Muslim or Orthodox. But the Kremlin owns the corporate headquarters and writes all the employee guidelines, and if you step out of line, they shut you down.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, both authoritarian systems are trying to solve the exact same problem, preventing independent spiritual authority from challenging the state, just using wildly different tools.
Right.
In the Western liberal model, freedom of conscience is a protected foundational right. In China, stability is achieved through forced cultural assimilation. In Russia, stability is achieved through managed political loyalty.
But the human cost of China's assimilation strategy is staggering. We have to pivot from the abstract philosophical debates about Sinicization to its dark, literal execution on the ground. We have to look at the mechanisms used against the people caught inside this Frankenstein machine.
Which brings us to the 2022 UN Human Rights Office report regarding the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region and Tibet.
Yeah.
Now, the language in UN reports is deliberately dry and bureaucratic, but the mechanics it describes are essential for understanding the realities of absolute state supremacy.
The report details how the Chinese state executes mass incarcerations by weaponizing counterterrorism laws. And the crucial mechanism here is the use of incredibly vague, broad definitions of what constitutes extremism.
Right, it's the vagueness that makes it powerful.
Exactly. By leaving the legal definition ambiguous, local authorities can justify the large-scale arbitrary detention of Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities for entirely mundane behaviors, like literally having a specific app like WhatsApp on a phone or communicating with relatives abroad.
The UN documents the conditions inside what the state officially terms vocational education and training centers.
That sounds so benign.
It does. But through extensive witness interviews, satellite imagery, and the state's own leaked data, the report cites evidence of pervasive mass surveillance, torture, severe ill treatment, and forced medical procedures.
The report outlines how these systematic discriminatory abuses operate with almost zero judicial oversight. The UN ultimately concluded that the scale and nature of these detentions may constitute crimes against humanity.
It's incredibly bleak.
So, what does this all mean? When you read about vague definitions of extremism, you realize how terrifyingly effective bureaucracy can be. They aren't just locking people up. They are using the actual criminal justice system as a weapon to make mass incarceration look like a paperwork exercise.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the dynamic Abdullah warned about, a system that views humans not as individuals with inherent rights, but as ideological variables that just must be neutralized to preserve the state's total control.
This connects directly to the fiery conclusion in Abdullah's article. He doesn't just critique the policy, he argues that China historically invaded East Turkestan in 1949 and later Tibet. He points to the hukou system and the mass detentions as forms of modern slavery utilized to oppress ethnic minorities. He concludes his piece by declaring the Chinese government the worst in human history, calling for an international coalition to intervene.
A very strong condemnation.
We are, of course, reporting his claims directly from the source material, but his stark condemnation mirrors the severity of the findings outlined in the UN report.
This raises an important question. Can a state actually remain stable long-term when it requires this level of severe spiritual and physical suppression to maintain its Frankenstein economy?
I mean, we started this journey trying to decipher a massive geopolitical contradiction. a regime wielding absolute communist political control while driving a cutthroat capitalist economy.
Right.
We walked through the terrifying mathematics of an AI-driven unemployment crisis that could leave hundreds of millions of people entirely disenfranchised. And we examined the devastating mechanisms the state employs, from the digital tethers of the hukou system to the mass detentions in Xinjiang, all to ensure that no independent thought or ideology can ever compete with the party.